And it can see me and it's recording.
It's recording, yes.
Well, hello everybody. This is really a interesting video.
And a long time in the making.
Yeah, long time in the making. I had made this video, I think, twice now, and we never uploaded it for a couple reasons. One is that I really didn't like how it came out. No editing fault. It was just, I just didn't like how I did it. Also, I really didn't know if the timing was right because a lot of the things that we're going to discuss were open-ended. I would say they were still a work in progress, but it's a lot less open-ended than it was. So I feel better about doing it. I feel like we're in a good space to do it because, like I said, a lot of that stuff's been tied up. Also, it's still kind of fresh in our minds. So, I mean, relatively speaking, we bought this house in October of 2021. We knew that the house needed a lot of work. That was no ifs, ands, or buts. We knew that. Whenever you buy a house that you know needs a lot of work, take your budget and triple it. And I say that because lots of things can happen. 2021, I said, is when we bought the house. We had the lumber inflation to deal with. That was no fault of anybody that is in our sphere. That's not anything that we could have had any control over. More importantly, though, it's just expensive to basically rebuild the house. So, just a word of advice there. But, we had a budget in mind of what it was going to cost, and we had basically interviewed 3 contractors. I say we. It was in October of 21, so Isaiah was not quite 2 yet, and he was a handful, still is a handful. But I did meet myself with, I think, 2 out of the 3. The one that Ginger and I met with is the one that we went with. We liked some of the things that he was saying on social media, and so we went with him. Price-wise...
Well, let's back that up a little bit. He claimed to be a Christian. He works with individuals who are in recovery to help keep them employed and basically keep them sober. And that's something that is an important ministry and something that we've supported in New Jersey, and felt like going with him was going to support a mindset of giving people a hand up, not a hand out, a hand up in life, because we don't all start out on equal footing, and some people really struggle. And this was a big deal for us to feel like we were working with somebody who was very community minded.
So, yeah, now I will say there's, this is not a regular ministry, but so we had hired him to do several things. I did have someone that was keeping an eye on things here who has a life, and he's not a carpenter. So, basically just making sure that, if I'm paying you to rebuild a wall, the wall's not left open, just somebody to kind of help watch out for us. Also, I had cameras everywhere here so that I could kind of see what was going on at will. Now, I will say, there was some events, they did replace the electric panel, so, there was times where things had to be undone for them to work, and I understand that, and that was to be expected. But by and large, I could see a lot of what was happening on a day-to-day basis. Did I check it every day? No. But I did try to keep an eye on things as they were happening, just to kind of make sure that there was nothing really off. So basically, what we wound up doing was getting him to rebuild basically one half of our house. The floors were in such shape that you would fall through. The walls were not horrible. It is very hard to tell, really. But the floors were the biggest issue. They were not fit for anyone to live here. So, we knew that that was going to be a problem. Also, there was paneling that had to come down, drywall had to be put up. This house was built in the 50s. It was built with rough lumber. Now, by today's standards, that's obsolete, old, and doesn't work. But I'll tell you what, that rough lumber is some great insulation. Is it pretty? No, but it does the trick, and I actually like it a lot. But nevertheless, the job was to basically rebuild one half of the house. Now, off of that, kind of like a little addition off, if you've got this half of the house, an addition off of that, just one room, is our bathroom. That also basically needed to be rebuilt. New floor, new foundation all around. It needed help.
It will indefinitely be decorated in a mushroom theme, because on one of Nick's first trips down here with loads of stuff, he discovered mushrooms growing out of the floor.
Yeah, so there was actually mushrooms coming up between where the floor meets the tub, or at that time it was a shower insert, but the base of that and the floor where they met, there was little mushrooms growing up. So there was a lot of things that had to be done, and we knew that. So, like I said, we had met with him. He gave us a rough price, which was very rough. Look, I knew that price he told us was not going to be what it was actually going to cost. I knew that because I knew that wasn't like materials, and I knew that things would come up. This is not, and I want to make this very clear, this is not a price issue. The issue was, the only way that it would relate to price that I would say is that the price to the quality of work. But if the agreed upon work was done correctly, the price would have been fine. Again, because we did expect that. Additionally, all the gas lines had to be redone for various reasons, because we added things and took things out and such. Also, all the plumbing had to be redone, drains, water lines, everything. We do have county water here, so at least for now. That'll be another video for another time. But we do have county water here, and so, there was a crawl space under the house, and all this stuff just had to be done. So, over the course of really a year, give or take, 11 months. Yeah, between 10 and 12 months, we'll say. This gentleman and his company, and I want to say this too. A lot of people will tell you, oh, well, make sure they're insured and licensed. It means absolutely nothing. Zero. You know why it means nothing? For one, generally speaking, when someone is insured for contracting, workmanship is not covered. When you're insured as a contractor, generally, now I know there's always an exception to the rule, but generally you're insured for liability. So that, let's say you're building a house and you don't build it right and it falls in, and let's say nobody's injured, but this person now has a house that you rebuilt that now just collapsed and they got to redo again. Insurance would cover something like that, but insurance is not going to cover work that was just done wrong. They're just not going to cover it. So, don't go by that. Please don't go by that. If that's the biggest thing I can tell you, don't go by that. But anyway, this person was both licensed and insured. And then they'll say, well, licensed, you can pull their license. That means nothing the same, because going through the process to do that really is much more strenuous on you, even if you have mounting evidence. It really doesn't mean anything, because in this particular gentleman's case, he has at least 2 other companies that we know of. So it would be nothing just to close down one and operate out of one of the other 2. Not worth it. Not to mention, there's no benefit to you. You're not getting any money back. So it's an issue. But anyway, he did work for us for about 10 or 12 months. And so he would send me pictures. Everything looked good. I had been down here, but you have to understand, if you watched our other videos, we did turn and burn trips. You know, it took us 12 hours to drive down with the trailer and the truck. So 12 hours there, 12 hours to get here, and 12 hours back is 24 hours. And then you figure to unload and sleep, yeah, another 12. We always were back between 33 and 36 hours. You know, we didn't dilly dally. My job, you know, like maybe I'm the one who messed up a bit here, but I came in, I looked at everything. Everything looked pretty good. So, you know, everything was fine. The floor, we weren't falling through the floor. I did notice that the floor was a little uneven, but you know, it was fine. It wasn't like, you know, oh my gosh, you know, you're standing at a 90-degree angle, but you know, it was noticeable. So, but it wasn't to the point where I was concerned. So, anyway, so we had basically had a lot of things done, and one of the last things to be done was the kitchen sink. Now, again, we have county water. This was in December. I had, you know, given him all the information of things to get. He went to Lowe's, he got it. He put the kitchen sink in, and he sent me a video of the kitchen sink running. Great. The problem with that is, again, it's December. Things will freeze. We were not leaving heat on here because, you know, honestly, in my opinion, it's just really unsafe to leave the types of heaters that we have, the heating system that we have on, unattended. Not to mention the fact, like, all this stuff is new. Like, we're not quite sure how all this stuff's going to work. So I didn't feel comfortable doing it. So I specifically told him, I said, make sure that you drain all these water lines. Now, to drain water lines right, it is a bit strenuous. I know that. He had done plumbing work for us before, and he never tested it, which I understand why, because it is a pain to drain the water lines correctly. You got to open them somewhere, and you got to blow air through it. It is a pain. But I just assumed before he sent me the video, because I never asked him to test it, but I just assumed he was not going to turn the county water on and do this. So anyway, so I got in the video that he was running the faucet. Okay, great. But I told him, I said, make sure you drain the lines. Well, he said, oh yeah, I did. Okay. Well.
And we got that really bitter cold weather before Christmas. And that was bitter cold in New Jersey, and it was bitter cold here in Kentucky.
Yeah. And there was a bit of it too. It wasn't like it was just one day and then it got hot. I mean, it was a stretch. So anyway, so one of the things that I had the friend of ours do down here was go under the crawl space and kind of just there was a lot of trash left under there from the previous owners, or previous tenants, I should say. It wasn't the owners. But you know, just trash down there, and I wanted it cleaned out. So he texted me and he told me, he said, all your water lines down here are broke. Okay. And here's where the fun began. So I was...
Because this was 3 days before we were due to arrive here. Literally, we had locked down the people that were coming with us. They couldn't do it other times without, you know, really rearranging things. We had a long weekend for, what was it, Martin Luther King. So it gave them time to recover before they had to return to their jobs. Like, it was kind of like, if we're going to do it, we need to do it. We had made out really well. We had avoided any crazy weather. We needed to get down here before winter set in.
And I was still working one of my part-time jobs, and I had worked up there straight till the end, basically. I think I was working there like 2 days before we left. And so, like, I worked right up till the end, and I had that, you know, planned right. So our friend down here had contacted us and said that, you know, while he was under there kind of moving stuff out, and while he was kind of getting cleaned up for us, he said that the water lines were broken. Now this was water line that we had already paid for, that had already been replaced once. But you see, he had sent me a video of the kitchen faucet running, and I specifically, not in veiled language, not just assumed, I specifically asked him to drain the lines. He knew there was no heat on here, so I specifically asked him, and he said he did drain the lines. Well, now all these lines are broke. So we had basically had 3 days or so to move in, and all our water lines were broke. So I had sent a text message just kind of on a whim to the gentleman who welded our driveway gate. We have a gate down at the end of our driveway. And when we bought the place, one of the hinges was messed up, and he came by and welded it and fixed it. Works great now. So I had just kind of messaged him and said, hey, do you know any plumber that works pretty quick that could come out and do this? So he sent me the information to a gentleman who has a contracting company here. And he came out, and at this point I had the guy who's our friend kind of down here while the plumber was getting here, or the new contractor, whatever you want to call him, because I didn't trust nobody. Like, I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. You know, I want to make sure this guy's legit. Because I called him and he said, yeah, I can go over there and take a look. So he did, and he gave me a price to put in PEX. If you're doing any kind of plumbing work, highly recommend PEX. PEX can be frozen a couple times and be okay. It's not hard plastic like PVC or CPVC. It is a lot more durable. It is more expensive, but it is a lot more durable. And if you're going to redo it all, you might as well redo it right, especially with this fiasco. So he did. He came over and he was working on it, and I get another phone call that the hot water heater needs to be replaced. Now, luckily, we didn't do the hot water heater yet because there was basically a valve the valve was broken off its gas. The valve was broken off the front. Why the previous tenants did that, I don't know. But they broke it off. They actually, I say broke, but they basically unscrewed it. I don't know why. And I found one on eBay for like $80 and had the gas guy put it on. So I know it was fine because we used it in the spring. But this time, when the plumber was redoing all the stuff in PEX, when he went to undo the lines, the whole top of the water heater just came off because it had, expanded so much from being frozen, it basically cracked the tank. So the problem with this hot water heater is it is a short tank because it's in the crawl space. It is not a traditional hot water heater that, is like 5 feet tall. This is a lot more limited space. So it's not as easy as just going to Lowe's and picking one up. So he had located one.
Well, and we couldn't get it tankless because it would have required the gas company to actually come out here and put a different size.
You needed a different meter to allow, if you're going to be doing any kind of that kind of stuff, like it's on-demand hot water heater, because everything here is gas, which we're going to talk about gas in a few minutes, but everything here is gas. And so it's not like, okay, I'm just running it for just a tankless hot water heater. No, everything's gas. So would have needed at the very least an upgraded meter. And again, 3 days to move in. That's not an option. So I didn't really, we had tankless in New Jersey. It was okay. It was fine. But the regular traditional hot water heater is also fine. So we were at this point where we had to locate one. He did locate one. It was about an hour and a half away, but he drove and got it and brought it back and put it in. So this is starting to get expensive, but he said, he was like, when you get here, you may want to think about having your drains replaced too. And that is the drain line under the house for like the sinks and stuff.
And I'm like, well, he already did that. What's wrong with it? He goes, well, under here, he basically had just taken black gutter line, which is just like, they come in different sizes. They use it for all kinds of different things. It's very durable. The problem with it is that it has ribs. I think this was like 6-inch or 8-inch that he just basically cut holes in and let the PVC drain pipe from like our drains, like our kitchen and stuff, go down into the black pipe, and that was how everything was draining. Well, the problem with that is that it's ribbed. So water's going to kind of lay in there for a little bit, and it's going to stink. You really do need PVC as far as you can go because it's smooth. It will drain all the way, so you're not going to get a residual smell, and water's just not going to sit in there. Should be common sense. Anyway, so I said, okay, how much for that? And he gave me a price, and I thought, all right, well, okay, we'll get that. I told him, I said, look, you've been good. Like, once we get there, we'll probably have that done pretty quick because I just want to get it done. Got here, he actually came ahead of me and turned the water on because he didn't want to turn the water on just to check and then have to drain it out only to refill it 2 days later or 3 days later when we get in. So he said, look, I'm not going to check the water. I'm not going to check the lines, but I'll come back ahead of you. Just call me when you get into Kentucky or when you're in West Virginia. And he said, I'll come over and check and make sure that everything's not leaking before you get here. He was true to his word. He did. And everything was fine. I think he said there was one leak underneath the faucets and stuff were leaking, which he did not do that. That was the original contractor. Nothing was tightened. And I believed him on that. And I'm going to tell you why. In the spring, when we were here, before contractor number 2 started doing stuff, contractor number 1, the one who messed stuff up, never tightened the fixture in the sink. So when we turned the water on initially, it was leaking under the sink, the bathroom sink. There was no kitchen sink at the time.
Not to mention,
Yeah, Ginger's going to tell you this.
They
This is funny.
completely plumbed the hot and cold backwards. So we got here last spring and we turned. I think we touched on this on one of the videos, but I just wanted to get a shower when we finally got the hot water going, and we waited like 2 hours for the hot water heater to.
This was in the spring, by the way.
And I turned the tub on because I'm going to get a shower. And it's cold. It's ice cold. Like ice cold. What in the world? I had it full on and it's ice cold. And after a while, I noticed that if I backed it off to where it was barely on, that's where I had hot water. They plumbed it backwards. So when I ran the wash machine when we were here in the spring, if I put it on a cold cycle, it would run hot. Now mind you, I was doing cloth diapers with Isaiah, we were washing our clothes, we should have known something was not quite right here, but we trusted him.
Yeah, your kitchen sink was leaking underneath. He said, but I think I took care of it. I said, okay. So he had come actually, I guess it was about 2 hours before I got in. I got here before Ginger on the final move. And so everything was fine. And I told him, I said, look, because I had to take everybody back after we had all gotten here initially. So I'm like, look, when I get in for good, I'm going to have you over and you can do the drains. So that's what happened. I had him scheduled for basically the second day that I would be here after I dropped everybody off and where it's done in New Jersey. And that was the plan. He was going to come do the drains. I got in from New Jersey, slept here. The next morning, I had woke up with a headache. I should have known something was off, but I didn't worry about it. Ginger and the kids had been here for a couple days because it took me time to take everybody back up, load up for the very last load, and then, come back down. So there was a couple days in there. And so I came in, like I said, woke up with a headache the next morning, and I just thought it was the stress of everything, and I didn't worry about it. So I thought, all right, got up, did our thing. The next morning, woke up with a headache as well. And this was the day that they were going to come and do the drains. So he was here. He opened up the door to go into the crawl space, and he said, dude, you got a gas leak. I'm like, well, how bad? He said, it reeks under here. Well, sure enough, went under there, and I could smell it. It was everywhere. Luckily, it is pretty vented under there. No crawl space is airtight anyway, but this actually had 2 vents underneath of the front porch, and there was one broken window for the crawl space, and so it had ventilation, but still, it's a gas leak, and it was a big one. As it turned out, contractor number 1 never tightened a lot of the gas line. There was a gas line that was basically the yellow flex pipe that they had cut an end off of and just jammed it into a black iron pipe and put gas cement around it. I mean, I've never seen this kind of stuff before. I'm not a gas expert, but I do know how gas is ran, and I know how it should and should not be ran, and that is wrong. He had shutoffs under there, basically just valves that were opened. Gas was just pouring out. I am fuming at this point because my family's been here, and thank God that the window was broken, that there is some ventilation under there. Otherwise, that could have been very bad. And so, here we go again.
At the end of the day, we were just very, very thankful to God, and through the stress of finding out about the plumbing and stuff, I knew we would get through it, and I was just like, Lord, what are you doing here? But had that plumbing not burst, if those pipes hadn't burst, we would not have been having work done underneath of there. We would not have discovered these gas lines, and this whole house could have just exploded one day. God was in the details of every disaster that we dealt with. And it's just, we've had so many God moments through this that we know that we're probably going to be learning lessons from this for years to come. But just our purpose in telling this is just, make sure that you have somebody keeping an eye on things. But also, too, when things do happen, take a minute, collect yourself, see what there is that you can learn from that experience. Because I've learned in my lifetime, God doesn't waste our pain. There's no situation that humans can create or find themselves in that God can't turn around very quickly. And that's exactly what he did here. And I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I really wanted to make this video, and for a lot of reasons. But that's a big one for me, because God is always in the details. He's always in the details. There's always something that can be taken from any situation. For us, we're people of faith. For us, we see God in those details. That's just how we're hardwired. Anyway,